The Witch in the Wood by T.H. White, Chapter 28. "I say," said King Pellinore, "this is pretty good news for us, isn't it? Do you suppose that woman expected us to be sorry?" They were sitting in the salar, where the fire had burned low and the queen had gone to bed. She had to say the rosary with her darlings, she explained, just as she did every night. Only God could defend them now, she said, because they were practically widows and orphans. "I knew young Arthur had it in him. Clever of him to let down the tents. And to have Ban and Bors in the ambush. You'll excuse us, Palomides, for seeming too bucked about this victory. We was forgetting you were in the opposite camp." "Not at all," said Sir Palomides kindly. "Better men come out top canine, no doubt. You see, we know Arthur. Practically brought him up, in fact, didn't we, Pellinore?" "Yes, indeed," said the king with enthusiasm. "He's a dear, dear fellow. I vote we drink a bumper for old Merlin, too." They filled their tankards solemnly. "Merlin," said Sir Grummore, "the finest magician of them all." "Funny thing," added Sir Grummore, lowering his tankard, "but I couldn't take to that fellow at first, not for the life of me. He's a nigromancer, you know. Was always brought up to believe that those fellows weren't quite out of the top drawer." "But you were wrong," cried the king. "Quite wrong," assented Sir Grummore generously. "A chip of the old block, that's what he is, and he's given us a noble victory. Good old Merlin, good old Arthur, and 3 cheers for the Battle of Bedegraine." "My sweet, fatherless lambkins," the queen was crooning upstairs in a passion of emotion, Will you stand up for your mother in defeat, just as she always stood up for you in victory?" "Yes," they cried stoutly, trying not to see her crying. "Will you avenge your mother's honor upon the tyrants of the South?" "Yes, yes, my own, my adorables. You are all your poor mother has got left to her now." For the moment the witch found that it suited her part better if she regarded the king as dead. It tortured the children more. "Will you stand up for her through thick and thin?" "Yes, yes, for better or for worse, forever. Mothers, glorious boys." And the queen began tucking them up for bed, so that they could see how she waited on them, hand and foot. There was nothing like having a mother to tuck you up every night. She pulled off half the furs, which they were accustomed to, exclaiming, "Tut, tut, mother's darlings will be quite smothered, won't they?" Blew out the light, which was supposed to be kept burning all night, in front of the holy picture, and retreated on tiptoe out of the door, waving a gracious, airy, tearful kiss as she went. The children hardly liked to pull the furs back after so much kindness, so in the morning they all had colds. In the salar, King Pellinore had suffered one of those sudden changes of mood to which he was subject. "Well, well," he said in a sad voice, "it's nice that somebody should have good news, I must say. I suppose young Arthur will be settling down now and getting married and all that, now that he has won his kingdom." "There was some talk about a girl called Lyonors, the daughter of the Earl of Sanham." "It seems dreadfully sad," said the king, "that everybody can't be married. I mean, what is the good of this victory to me? I haven't won it, have I? So why am I drinking all these bumpers and everything? It doesn't seem logical." "What you want, Pellinore, is a jolly good hunt. You ought to go out and catch that questing beast which you saw this afternoon." "His Majesty should meet with triumph and disaster," said Sir Palomides, "and treat those 2 impostors in the same manner." "Shake up your liver," added Sir Grummore. "It does seem the only thing to do," said the king mournfully. "After all, only a Pellinore can catch it." "That's a brave fellow." "Only I do feel so sad sometimes about the Queen of Flanders' daughter. She wasn't very beautiful, you know, Grummore, but she understood me. We seem to get on together, if you see what I mean. I amn't very clever anyways. I amn't very clever always, perhaps, and I seem to get into trouble when I'm by myself. But when I was with Piggy, she always knew what to do. It was company-like. It isn't bad to have a bit of company when you're getting on in life. Especially when you've been chasing after that questing beast all the time, what? It gets a bit lonely in the forest, you know. Not that the questing beast wasn't company in her way, as far as she went, only you couldn't really talk things over with her, not like Piggy. and she couldn't cook. I don't know why I'm boring you fellows with all this talk, but really, sometimes one feels as if one couldn't carry on. It isn't as if Piggy were a flapper, you know. I really did love her. Grumore, really I did. And if only she would have answered my letters, it would all have been so nice. Poor old Pellinore, they said. All the petals, pursued the king, said she would if she could, but she can't. Petals? Primrose petals. I say, Palomides, do you believe in omens? This belief is prevalent in the East. I saw 7 maggot pies today, Palomides. They were flying along like frying pans. 1 for sorrow, added the king, 2 for joy, 3 for a marriage, and 4 for a boy. So 7 ought to be 4 boys, oughtn't it, what? Bound to be, said Sir Grumore. They were going to be called Aglavale, Percival, and Lamorak, and then there was one with a funny name, which I can't remember. That's all off now because of the petals. Still, I must say I would have liked to have had a son called Dornar. Look here, Pellinore, you must just let bygones be bygones. You'll only wear yourself out like this. Why don't you be a brave chap and go and catch the beast? I suppose I must. That's it, take your mind off things. It's 18 years since I've been after it, said the king pensively. It would be a change to catch it. I wonder where my bracket is. Ah, Pellinore, now you're talking. Suppose our honoured monarch would have started once? What? This evening, Palomides, in the dark? Sir Palomides nudged Sir Grumore secretly. Administer blows to the iron, he whispered, while at high temperature. Ah, I see what you mean. I don't suppose it matters, said the king. Very well, then, cried Sir Grumore, taking control of the situation. That's what we'll do. We'll put old Pellinore at one end of the wood this very night in an ambush. Then we two will drive the place methodically toward him. The beast is bound to be there still, as it was seen in the wood only this afternoon. Don't you think, inquired Grumore as they were dressing up in the darkness, that it was clever the way I explained about our being here? I mean, to drive the beast, you know. An inspiration, said Sir Palomides. Is my head on straight? My dear chap, I can't see an inch. The Saracen's voice sounded uneasy. This darkness, he said, seems rather palpable. Never mind, said Sir Grumore. It will hide any little faults in our make-up. Perhaps the moon will come out later or something anyway. Thank God his sword is blunt, remarked Sir Palomides. Oh, come now, Palomides. You mustn't get cold feet. I can't think why it is, but I feel perfectly splendid. Perhaps it was those bumpers. I'm jolly well going to Prancing Bay tonight, I can tell you. You are buttoning yourself on to me, Sir Grumore. Those are the wrong buttons. Beg pardon, Palomides. Would it be enough if you were to wave your tail in the air instead of prancing? There is a certain discomfort, Sir Grumore, which devolves upon the forequarters during the prance. I shall wave my tail as well as prance, said Sir Grumore firmly. Hocus pocus, as that fellow Lot kept saying. Ha! It was a glorious victory. Just as you say, Sir Grumore. Take your hoof off my tail for a moment, Palomides. Could you carry your tail over your arm for the first part of the journey? It would hardly be natural. No. And now, added Sir Palomides bitterly, it is going to rain. He thrust his hand out of the serpent's mouth and felt the drops on the back of it. They drummed on the canvas like hail. My dear old forequarters, said Sir Grumore cheerfully, it was you who thought of this night expedition in the first place. Cheer up, old fruit. It will be much worse for Pellinore waiting for us to come. After all, he hasn't got a canvas with spots he hasn't got a canvas hide with spots on it. Perhaps it will stop. Of course it will stop. That's the ticket, old pagan. Now then, are we ready? Yes. Give the step then. Left, right. Don't forget the tantivy. Left, right, tantivy, I beg your pardon. I was only baying. Tantivy. Now for the prance. Oh dear, Sir Grumore. Sorry, Palomides. Yours truly will hardly be able to sit down under the dripping furs Under the dripping fir trees, King Pellinore stood stock still, looking vaguely in front of him. His bracket on a long string was wound around him several times. He was in full armor, which was getting rusty, and the rain came in at 5 places. It ran down both shins and both forearms, but the worst place was his visor. This was constructed on the snout principle, since it was found that if you had a particularly ugly helmet, it frightened the enemy. King Pellinore's looked like an inquisitive pig. It let the rain in through the nostrils, however, and the water ran down in front in a steady trickle which tickled his chest. The king was thinking. Well, he thought, he supposed this would keep them quiet. It wasn't very nice in all this rain and everything, but the dear fellows seemed keen on it. It would be difficult to find anybody kinder than old Grum, and Palomides seemed a friendly chap, although he was so learned. If they wanted to have a lark like this, it would only be decent to humor them. Besides, it was nice for the bracket to have a little outing. It was a pity that it could never keep unwound. But there you couldn't interfere with nature. He would have to spend all tomorrow scrubbing his armor. Well, it would give him something to do. It would give him something to do, reflected the king, which was better than wandering about all the time, with this eternal sorrow gnawing at his heart. And the king fell to thinking about Piggy. He remembered how he had met her in Flanders while he was busy questing. The beast had got mixed up with some staghounds, and had taken to the sea as the stags do, and had swum the channel. Old Grum had been going on a crusade or something, with a splendid great ship that had a red griffin painted on the sail, and he had most kindly offered a lift. After that, they had gone on together. The nice thing about Piggy had been that she did not laugh at him. Quite a lot of people laughed at you when you were after this questing beast and never caught it. But Piggy never laughed. She seemed to understand at once how interesting it was and made several most sensible suggestions about how to catch it. Naturally, one did not pretend to be very clever or anything, but it was nice not to be laughed at. One was doing one's best. And then the dreadful day had come when this beastly magic boat had floated to the shore. They had got into it naturally, because knights must always accept an adventure, and it had sailed away at once. They had waved to Piggy ever so, and the beast had suddenly appeared out of a wood and waded out to sea after them, looking most upset. But the boat had gone on, and the small figures on the shore had dwindled till they could hardly see the scarf which Piggy was wearing, and the bracket had been sick. From every port he had written her. He had given letters to all the innkeepers everywhere, and they had promised, like anything, to send them on. But she never answered. It was because he was unworthy, decided the king. He was vague and not clever and always getting into a muddle. Why should the daughter of the Queen of Flanders write to a person like that, especially when he had gone and got into a beastly magic boat and sailed away? It was like deserting her, and of course she was right to be angry. Meanwhile it would keep raining, and the water did trickle so, and now that bracket was sneezing. The armor would be rusty, and there was a sort of draft down the back of his neck where the helmet screwed on. It was dark and horrible. Some sticky stuff was dripping off the trees. "Excuse me, Sir Grummle, but is that you snuffling in my ear?" No, dear fellow, go on. I'm only doing my baying as well as I can." "It is not the baying I refer to, Sir Grummle, but a kind of breathing noise of a husky nature." "My dear chap, it's no good asking me. All I can hear is a kind of creaking, like a bellows." "Yours truly thinks the rain is going to stop. Do you mind if we stop too?" "Well, Palomides, if you must stop, you must. But if we don't get this over quickly, I shall get my stitch again." "What do you want to stop for?" "I wish it wasn't so dark." "But you can't stop just because it's dark." "No, one appreciates that." "Go on then, old boy. Left, right, that's the ticket." I say, Grummle, said Palomides later. "There it is again." "What is?" "The puffing, Sir Grummle." "Are you sure it isn't me?" inquired Sir Grummle. "Positive. It is a menacing or amorous puff, similar to the grampus. This Paynim sincerely wishes that it were not so dark." "Oh well, we can't have everything. Now march on, Palomides, there's a good fellow, do." After a bit, Sir Grumore said sepulchrally, "Dear old boy, Can't you stop bumping me all the time? But I am not bumping you, Sir Grummore. Well, what is then? Yours faithfully can feel no bumps. Something keeps bumping me behind. Is it your tail, perhaps? No, I have that wound round me. In any case, it would be impossible to bump you behind because one is in front. There it is again. What? The bump? It was a definite assault, Palomides. It was a definite assault, Palomides. We are being attacked. No, no, Sir Grummore, you are imagining things. Palomides, we must turn round. What for, Sir Grummore? To see what is bumping me behind. Yours truly can see nothing, Sir Grummore. It is too dark. Put your hand out of your mouth, Palomides, and see what you can feel. I can feel a sort of round thing. That's me, Sir Palomides. That's me behind. Sincere apologies, Sir Grummore. Not at all, my dear chap, not at all. What else can you feel? The learned Saracen's voice began to falter. Something cold, he said, and slippery. Does it move, Palomides? It moves, and it snuffles. Snuffles? Snuffles! At this moment, the moon came out. Merciful powers! Exclaimed Sir Palomides in a high, squealing voice as he peered out of the mouth. Run, Grummore, run! Left, right, quick march, double march, faster, faster, keep in step. Oh, my poor heels! Oh, my God! Oh, my hat! It was no good, decided the king. Probably they had got lost or wandered off somewhere to amuse themselves. It was beastly wet, and really he had done his best to fall in with their plans. Now they had wandered off, you might say, inconsiderately, and left him with this wretched bracket to get rusty. It was too bad. With a determined motion, the king marched off home to bed, having the bracket along behind him. 6 branches up in one of the fir trees, with most of its buttons burst, the counterfeit beast was arguing with its stomach. But my dear knight, however could yours truly foresee a calamity of this nature? You thought of it, replied the stomach furiously. You made us dress up, it's your fault. At the foot of the tree, the questing beast herself, in a sentimental attitude, waited in the romantic moonlight for her better half. And that is the end of chapter 28.